Hi, my name is Jamie Tomey, and I am pleased to welcome you to this week's Quarantour with Craig Jobson, brought to you by Artist Book House. Hope you enjoy it. Welcome everyone to this week's Quarantour. This week we are pleased to have Craig Jobson with us. Craig is an Evanston-based letterpress printer and book artist. We're really excited to have you here, Craig. Thank you for joining us.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm so excited because not a lot of people in our Zoom know this, except for my friend Linda, who mentioned the other day that we finally get to have our field trip to your studio, which we had planned with the bookbinding class at the Evanston Art Center earlier this spring, and we didn't get to have it because of this shutdown, and so now we get to have it. So thank you for having us.
Well, when is this going to be? I need to know so I can sweep up the food off the floor and hide the liquor bottles.
Right. So the first question that we usually ask people is, how did you come to the book arts? What was it about the book arts that drew you to it? And what's sort of walk us through your history as to where you got to this point where you have this small press called Lark Sparrow?
Since I'm sorry to say this, twice as old, in some cases 3 times as old as the people who are watching this, where your parents or maybe even your grandparents were my classmates, my story may be a minute or 2 longer than someone else's.
Right.
When I was young, and Lord, that was a long time ago. When I was young, I said, "Mom, do you know what I'd like to be when I grow up?"
What did you say?
She said, "No, what would you like to be, Craig?" And I said, "I want to be a book artist." Yeah, like that really happened, okay?
You planned it. You knew what a book artist was when you were 5 years old.
Well, I'll tell you what, there was an element of destiny that really started when I was in high school, and I created it was a satiric zine for my senior year at my high school. And it was an 8-pager. It came out like about every 6 weeks or so. And I knew that I had done a really great job on this zine when the principal insisted that when I published the next 8 pages, everything had to be redacted except for the prepositions.
So did you have to cross everything out, or did you just not, like, what was his point?
Thick black lines. Thick black lines. Everything. I've saved that issue, and someday I'm going to get it framed.
Oh my gosh, I would love to see that someday. That sounds so cool. What grade was this? This was high school?
High school, senior year, yeah.
Senior year, wow. And then what happened?
I wanted to do something other than high school politics, and the zine was absolutely perfect.
And how did you produce it? Was it on one of those rolly photo mimeograph thingies?
We old people call that a mimeograph.
Yeah, and the smell of it?
It was heaven.
Yeah. I remember those. And they kind of had that blue tint to them.
That would get all over your fingers and your clothes.
And your clothes, exactly. What was your edition size for that?
Oh, it was about 85.
Oh, nice.
I wanted people to scramble to get a copy.
Nice, nice. Okay, so walk us through what happened after high school.
Okay. After high school, I enjoyed writing so much. I went off to college and university, took an English degree, wrote even more, and I took another degree because I loved art so much, and I studied printmaking and design there. But probably one of the most significant things that happened when I was in school was like many other students, like most students, like close to all students, I had a part-time job.
Okay, of course.
I had a part-time job. But my job was not a typical job. I got a job at the county hospital as a respiratory therapy technician.
Wow.
The interview went like this: "Craig, please stand up." I stood up. "Now breathe deeply." I breathed deeply. And they said, "The next part of the interview is take this 20-pound weight and run up 8 floors in less than a minute and a half."
Holy cow.
I shaved it off by about 5 seconds. In. Totally in as a respiratory therapy technician. Now, one of the nice things for me, and this is related to the book arts, was I did this for about 5 years. I would walk around sketching things.
Yeah.
People, equipment, places in the hospital. And my manager found out that I was doing this, and he asked me to do some drawings for an in-service.
Oh, cool.
It was really fortuitous because when I was done with school, I went to Dallas, Texas, from Austin, and I applied for a job at the American Heart Association as their art director. And damned if I didn't get the job.
Nice.
And what was strange to me though was that they valued my sketches and my CPR experience more than they did my sterling design portfolio.
Right. That's really cool. So what did you have to do for them as the art director in that position? What was your job?
It was a perfect job for me. I did public health assignments like anti-smoking, sickle cell anemia. I don't know how many people are out there, but can you see how many people are out there?
Yeah, we've got.
Okay. I want them to raise their hand.
Okay.
If they've ever gone to a doctor, and before you see the doctor, a nurse comes in and takes your blood pressure.
I feel like that's everyone.
It could be.
Gene raised his hand. Yep, everybody's pretty much.
And thank you on behalf of my efforts for doing that, because that was a major campaign at the American Heart Association, where we would try to get all doctors to do that in order to prevent anybody.
They're muted.
Stroke.
In order to prevent what?
Okay. Stroke.
A stroke. Okay.
High blood pressure is the first indication of stroke. Okay.
And that was your doing on the campaign. Yes. Nice.
I did this. Dare I say this on the webinar here? I did a sterling advertising campaign.
You did a wonderful job.
Wonderful job. Okay, but there was a fly in the ointment in this job.
Okay.
And that was everything that I did for 4.5 years had to be printed in 2 colors. One of the colors was black. Guess what the other color was?
I'm going to guess it's American Heart Association. Was it red for blood?
Ding, 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 ding.
I won!
Now, if you were an art director, you really don't want to have everything in your portfolio black and red. It doesn't look like you've had a lot of experience. So I gave up. I gave up the goodness of social service and benefiting humanity to serve mammon. I did something that I never thought I would do in my entire life. I signed up to work at a large ad agency whose name I cannot say, except that it sounded like BBDO. And I worked on a yummy, crunchy, cheesy flavored corn snack chip.
Okay. And we aren't allowed to know that because of liability on your...
Liability, being sued, whatever. Now, I have to ask the people in the audience there, how many of you have ever had a corn chip at any time in your eating life?
I'm pretty sure it's going to be
everyone.
All
hands went up. And
all
if they
hands
go
going up.
They're probably lying, okay? So since you've had these snack chips, and I was part of the advertising team that encouraged you to have those snack chips. A round of applause.
Leah is
would
giving
not
you
hurt
applause
my
right now.
Yes, okay. You will if you watch the advertising on TV, you would remember the wonderful words, quickness for you, quality for them.
Oh, funny. That was you.
Funny. That was advertising.
Nice.
So that advertising campaign and the fact that I worked in designing haberdashy art products, the men in Dallas would break down the doors to get at the no iron work shirts that I was advertising. My soul.
Your soul.
My soul started to leak out from my socks.
So what was it about that made it soul sucking, soul leaking?
Well, first I have to say, the experience was so wonderful. It was like in 6 months, I would have done what you would do in 3 years for an MFA program.
Oh my gosh, wow.
I am not kidding. Because, and this was the tough part, when you work for an ad agency like that, they own every minute of your life.
Yeah.
If a competitor puts something up on the air, you guys have to put up something within 24 hours or you're going to lose market share. So
yeah.
It's life like that every day, all the time. And I said, boy, I don't really need this aggravation.
Yeah. So
and
then what happened?
Well, I decided to make a change.
Yeah.
And I took all of my skills, wrapped them up into a box, and went to a publisher.
Okay.
I heard angels singing.
You were like, this is it. This is my life's work.
I was convinced that was true. I worked for 2 L-High publishers. L-High means elementary and high school. We published only textbooks. It was like the most redeeming thing other than the blood pressure thing at the Heart Association. The most redeeming thing I think I've ever done. We did English books, we did history books, and I loved it.
And then you were in Texas still at that point.
No,
and then
I came north to Evanston.
Yeah. When did you move up here?
For another job in publishing.
Yes.
Unbeknownst to any of you in the listening audience, there was something that was going on there called the Publishing Wars.
Publishing Wars.
Publishing Wars. And it was actually very terrible.
Oh.
Because what would happen was that there were these 2 men whose names I cannot say, but they rhyme with Robert Maxwell. And I'll just say there were 2 guys and leave it at that. Robert Maxwell is no longer with us, so I'm not going to get sued. But at any rate, these wealthy men would buy up small and medium publishers, lay everybody off, take all the copyrights, put the copyrights into a file case, and take out the competition so that the publishing houses they own would publish and sell just their books.
So they had this monopoly on, once they bought up all the smaller publishing houses, they had kind of a bigger monopoly, not to bring a board game into this.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
It was nasty, nasty, nasty.
Yeah.
And I got caught up in that in both of the publishing houses where I worked. And the last publishing house, it was so wonderful, so sweet. I loved this job. But after it was sold out, my job and my responsibilities changed 3 different times in 1 month. And I decided I didn't want that aggravation either. So I went looking for another job, and I found it after I looked around, actually. I looked around.
Sure.
I looked around, and I found a job at Columbia College.
Yeah. What did you start doing at Columbia?
I was brought on to teach, Be Still My Heart, publication design, and the history of typography.
Oh, fun. To undergraduates.
Undergraduate, yes.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I started looking for a graduate program, because if you're teaching in a college, it sort of helps you to have a graduate degree rather than just baccalaureates, unless you are really famous.
Right. And you were so famous.
Doesn't make any difference. Yes. Okay. So I looked for a school. I got 5 different schools out of by the way, 40 different colleges and universities that surround Chicago. I interviewed a number of places whose names I will not mention. because I'll know I'll get sued. And the last place I looked was right where I was teaching at Columbia College in a new interdisciplinary arts program that had within that, and say the words for me. Say the words.
MFA in book and paper.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And you started, I think, a couple of years after I did. When did you start your MFA?
Oh,
because I was group 1 in 97.
Okay, I was in 98. Okay.
Yeah, so you started right after. Yeah,
right.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, so every course I took changed my mind about what I wanted to major in this program. But I settled finally on doing book work, not paper making or the other wonderful things you could do. And with the book work, I wound up taking this wonderful course with Audrey Niffenegger, who everybody should know that's watching this. Audrey Niffenegger taught a year-long course in bookmaking.
Editions,
that's exactly right. And
yep.
It was bookmaking from, I think I'm going to make a book, all the way to, I've bound up this book, okay?
Exactly.
In between, there were certain things you had to do. And one of the things I had to do was to print my first book.
Was this your Dominoes book?
It was.
Oh, I love that story and I love that book.
Thank you. But the secret behind that whole domino thing was on the first press proof I pulled, I had this epiphany. It was the kind of epiphany where you fall down and you're struck dead. And I knew at that moment what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, which was make books. I felt it was my mission, and I made this as part of the mission. Can you even see this? Can you read it for us, Jamie?
On a mission for God.
I stayed on that mission. Back at the ranch where I was teaching classes, I realized after about 6 months, none of my students knew anything about making books. So I made it a component in my publication design class. I made it a component in my history of typography class.
Yeah, because it's important. The book arts is a really big thing on those two things, right? I don't know, those two disciplines.
Thank you for saying that, Jamie. One of my students asked, Craig, this is typography. Why are we making a book in here? And I said, where do you think typography came from?
Right.
Bippy. So we made books in both classes, and in my publication class, which was 2 sections, in the 14 years after I got an MFA, we made over 1,024 abecedariums.
Wow. And for those people who are on the Zoom who don't know what an abecedarium is, Craig, do you want to explain what an abecedarium is, or shall I?
You go ahead. I'm going to find a page here. Go ahead.
Okay. So an abecedarium is basically a fancy name for an alphabet book. So, yeah, abecedarium is an alphabet book.
Exactly. Here is one of the 1,024 books my class made, and it was one of the best that I've ever seen. I don't know if you can even read this.
Yeah, scoot it back just a teeny tiny bit. It says, I love red.
Okay. This book was written, designed, and produced by 3 different women.
Oh.
One woman grew up here in the United States, another woman grew up in China, and a third woman grew up in Korea. And on every page, here's the word for measles, okay?
Okay, you got to hold it up a little bit more and back it up a little bit. And then now talk so it's you. Hold on, I'm going to spotlight your video here.
All right.
Back it up a little bit more, please. Little bit more, and hold it up. And now your hand is kind of covering the bottom of the book.
Oh.
There we go.
Okay. What it says is
the word for measles in
3 different languages.
Oh, I love that. How did they print that? How did they print that one? What it was it just on a computer?
Printed digitally.
Okay.
In the graphics lab at Columbia.
Nice. Okay.
So
that is really cool.
That's what happened in publication class. In my typography class, in that 14 years, which is only 1 section, we made 560 11 by 17, 88-page history books of typography.
Yeah. I remember visiting you in that class one time. I think I helped visit. Okay, let me spotlight your video here, Craig.
All right.
Okay. Oh, that is fantastic. Tracking type.
The students had
Nice.
to research the typographers and then share their research with the class. Everybody had to design pages.
And each class, this is a collaboration, each class presented one book. So the students had to do their page spread on their typographer, and then they each got a copy of each student's page spread and then bound them together. Am I remembering that correctly?
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Amy, absolutely correct. And those were individual books. And something that I never told those students, because I knew it would affect the enrollment, was that each one of those books required 152 separate steps.
Right.
And one of the steps was go research somebody in the Newberry Library.
Right, right. And you didn't want to tell them that until after they made the book.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so at the end of those 14 years, I said, my mission here is done.
Yes.
I'm going to go make my own books, my own press, and I founded Lark Sparrow Press, which is a press that dedicated to the production of contemporary short fiction,
Poetry.
Broadsides, and stamps.
Right. And you hand set each piece, each book, by individually setting the type and then printing. But you usually work with authors and artists, is that correct?
I do. And I don't hand set all of the type every time. There are, I think, 4 books out of the 27 things I've done since 2014 that I used a computer to generate the type.
Yeah.
Everything else.
I just want to keep saying that you hand set everything. I'm just going to keep spreading that rumor, Craig.
Well, I was going to show you some of the things that I did in my my studio, but first I'm going to ask Ken if he would run the slideshow, just so people know what it was I was doing and where. The title of this is, as you can see there, Printing a Book. It's easier than you think. Okay, as you walk in, looking at type cases there, and those of us who know, those are 2 works by Sean Sheehy that he did on a standing press that are absolutely wonderful pieces.
So talk to us about your type cases, though.
Book artists are a little bit different from other people that print letterpress. Other people that do letterpress generally have case after case and case after case of type. I have about 6 fonts that I use on a regular basis. 3 of them are Cheltenham, Plantin, and Univers. But I have like 6 different weights and 5 different point sizes of each one of those fonts. So it takes up a lot of room that way.
Now, as a typography professor and as a graphic designer for your whole existence, what is it about these particular 3 fonts?
Well, I can tell you the exact answer on that, at least as far as Plantin goes. Plantin's origins were designed back in the 16th century, 1500, and where fonts like that were designed, they were used exclusively for books. There was no advertising, I'm sorry to say. They printed books. And amazingly, those fonts that were used at that time have survived to this very day.
So it's historically a book font, and that's one of the reasons why you love it.
It's not only historically, but it's also the most readable fonts. And Cheltenham, by the way, and I don't know if anybody notices this or not, but if you look at the New York Times are all done in Cheltenham, different weights and different condensing of Cheltenham. This is what I call my studio. It's a room, probably only one person can get around in it at one time. It has type cases there for every configuration that I want. I have galleys at an angle. I have music. I have coffee. I have photographs of all the people I love.
You have all of the bone folders and book tools on those shelves in the back on the window.
You know, people always comment about that. They say, Craig, why do you need so many bone folders? And the answer you may not have expected was that when I was teaching, I had equipment for every student in class. If I didn't, somebody would show up, not be able to do the work, and expect to bring it in next week when I would have to teach 2 classes. I didn't like teaching 2 classes. As a matter of fact, I told my students, if you miss 3 classes or get behind by 3 classes, I'll ask you to drop the course. It was so labor intensive. That student would never catch up.
And also your classes were 4 hours. So if you miss 4 hours of something, yeah, that's a lot.
That's like
a lot of the
3
time.
classes in another school. So,
Okay, so
I've got bone folders and brushes and smudge sticks and just all kinds of things that are necessary for making art. The type case. I'm going to tell you some things that you're not going to believe this. After setting type for one book, where the book had, I'm not making this up, 180,000 handset characters, I developed a body sense of where something might be. And I could reach out to grab something without looking at it and bring it over to where I could check the letter and put it onto a galley. I also got where I could blindly hold a piece of type, and I could tell what letter it was. When you get old, you have all these accomplishments. That's all I can say. Beneath this piece of equipment is a writer-approved galley. That means I had to set the type to match the content of what she approved. And when I set the type, I put the letters, letter by letter, between lengthwise pieces of leading, and I set letter by letter. It looks like the letters are backwards, but only from the position of setting it. The letters are upside down and backwards. And it takes a little while to get used to it, but the amazing thing is that when I would turn over the type so it's right side up, I couldn't read it. I mean, I can read type on a page, but on the job stick there, it was more difficult.
The metal thing right here that you're showing us.
Yes.
So the lines of the type are on the right side, and this little doohickey on the left side that's under where it says paragraph 6,
yes.
That's the symbol. That piece right there that moves back and forth. So if you want to have a longer set of type, you just move that back and forth. And then what's the circle that you have up there? I know what it is. So tell us that circle.
I'm going to tell you what that is, but only in a minute. And I'll tell you that also as an aside. I never use this system anymore. This is called a cut trimmer, and it cuts your leading to 1/100th of an inch. Could also take off a finger. The proofing board. This tells me what I need to do and what I've already done. This is what it looks like getting started when I have all the signatures identified, A1, A2, B1, B2, and their page numbers, and what might likely be on that particular part of the page.
And is this red mark your indication that you have already set that type?
No, that tells me that when I go from page 40 to 39, there's going to be artwork there.
Oh, cool.
There isn't artwork, there is a terrible problem.
Oh, that's so cool. And now, are you printing these just by the single folio, or are you printing more and then cutting down?
It depends on the book. This book right here, I would print 2 pages at a time.
So just in a folio situation.
Right. And the reason I did that was because the number of impressions I would have to do were so awful and horrible and long that I thought I'll save some time by doubling up.
Okay, what is this for those people in the audience who don't know?
Handset type that is 1/4 of a page. A page in this particular book, when I said it, was 2,200 pieces of movable type leading and spacing.
And so I want to mention also, all of these individual letters are separate, as are all of these little squares of metal after the line. So if you can see up there where it's fairies, I think is the word, 5th row down from the top, it says fairies. All of that on the left of fairies, those are individual little bits of metal to fill in that space.
Correct.
So go ahead and say what you were going to say, Craig. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just thought there are people on here who don't know what this sort of thing is. So go ahead.
Here is what everybody asks me. Craig, you have a computer. You could output thousands of pages without having to go through this laborious handset type. Why, Craig?
Why?
It's because it's part of the craft. It's the part of making something by hand that makes it different from something that's just commercially produced. And of course, all of this harkens back to the early 19th century when books were all made by hand as a revolt from industrialization.
So that's why you do this obsession.
That black thing that you saw earlier was a magnet. And I use magnets now to stabilize the text block, which is all the type there. I also set the type on Mylar so that it slides very easily off of the galley onto the press bed. The notches between each of the orange magnets, I put C-clamps in there to keep it all together, and I can move that text block around faster than you could just start to get the type off of the galley tray.
So does the Mylar stay on the press underneath the set type?
I have two sets of Mylar. One set of Mylar is on the galley tray, and I can easily slide the type off the galley tray. And then there's Mylar on the press that accepts the text block.
And what is this little T thing down on the right-hand bottom corner?
That is a tool, and it locks the type in place. I don't know if you can see. No, I've covered up the locks.
You can see it under, it's the number 1. It's just slightly left of the number 1. It's the metal piece. So you can see that little thing like that coin key.
It pushes all the type in one direction and tightens it up. Called the make ready. And the make ready is the longest, awfulest part of printing, because especially in book printing, because you want to match up line on one side of the paper with a line on the other side of the paper. And you want the footers to match up with the other footers. Now to do that, you have to move a column of type like this. I'm not kidding, like 3/100ths of an inch to make it line up. And as soon as you get to line up in one part, it goes out of whack in another part.
So you use all of these pieces of metal and magnet and wood to lock it into place.
I can tell you went through book and paper school. Be still my heart. I leap up as if with joy. Impression on the press coming on.
That's coming off. That's when you've already run it through on the type. And you can see the type there has transferred or printed onto the paper, which is on the tin pan, which is the roll where your hand is holding. So
very good. Yes,
and is this, are you, how many Vandercook, how many presses do you have in your studio space?
I have only one letterpress, but I also have a printmaking press that I can do either lithography or intaglio work on it.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, nice.
Oh boy, that's just, it makes my heart happy just to see that.
Yeah.
There's a little button there that I was wearing that day that I wore for weeks. It says, my grandfather was an immigrant.
Yeah.
I made one for Judith that said, my father was an immigrant. I wanted to make another one that said, bite me, but I didn't. Oh, wow.
There's your drying rack.
That's a drying rack.
I know, it looks like an angel to me, like a little bit of an angel.
Filled to the tippy top. And boy, you do that, and that's a day's work right there, man.
That's a day's work. So what is this? How many did you have in this edition for this particular book?
It was an edition of 70, and each book had 76 pages in it. And if you take the time to multiply that, it meant over 5,000 hand-pulled impressions.
That's just always so fascinating and lovely to me. That is awesome.
Okay, that's a different view of the dryer. Yay!
Oh, yay!
Proofing
now,
board,
is this in the same order as your job board was?
Everything filled in there. That meant I was ready to take it, fold and gather the pages, and put them in a book press, which is that press on the far left.
So that they can fall in love with each other.
That's it exactly. Increase wonderfully. Then I would take the folded sheets and put them in an archival box in order to be ready to make a book out of them.
Now you're also doing all of the sewing and such, or do you have people that help you with the sewing?
That's a very good question. And here is how I do that. This book in particular was the deluxe edition, that is with the brass plate and the goatskin spine and the slipcase. Those were bound up by a good friend of mine and former TA, Amy Masick, formerly Amy Radis, okay? And she put those together, and then what I'm doing is I'm doing the binding on the regular edition, but only as requests come in to
purchase.
Never bind up the whole edition, or you'll die with books on shelves that you never touched again.
You'll have way too many. So this is your most recent one?
No,
or is
this is from a while back.
What are you working on now?
I'm working now on another 72-page book with 7 short stories that were written by Lynn Sloan, an Evanston writer, and it's going to have embossed pages, illustrations, flash fiction, and a cover that's made out of engraved bamboo. The title of it is fortune cookies.
Fortune cookies.
Now, if anyone is so inclined, I have everything that I've worked on for the last at least 20 years online on my new spanking new website.
larksparrowpress.com. And there's also extra pictures on your website of different projects, but also of your studio. So if people want to see some more from your studio, that would be where to look. Where is your studio actually located?
It's 20 steps behind my house.
So you have not had any problems going into your studio during COVID. You don't have to travel very far. You can just take your coffee or go have coffee in your studio. Yeah.
I tell people I'm only out there on the days of the week that end with a Y.
I love that. How many books have you produced with Lark Sparrow? I think you mentioned it before, but I can't remember what that number was.
The books are 20 books. But like I said earlier, I'm also doing broadsides and I'm doing stamps. And the thing that really prompted me to do that, by the way, is that when I make a book, it may take me a year because I'm doing all the work myself. Getting that amount of type and doing that many impressions takes a pretty long time. So I'm filling in spaces there with printing broadsides, which can be found on my website, and also postage stamps. I have a sheet of stamps I'd like to show you. I've done a series of 5 stamps that I call the resistance stamps. And here's one that looks like this.
Fake governance. So these are not actually able to be mailed. They're just
Yes, they
stamps.
are. Yes, they are. They are.
Wow.
You can mail any kind of fake postage stamp, providing you put a regular U.S. issue stamp in the upper right-hand corner of your envelope.
Nice.
I make these things and I give away the proofreaded ones, and I also have a version that's on the computer, and I mail these things out with the exhortation: print, cut, glue, and poke.
Do you have another one sitting there that you can show us?
You know who said bigliest?
I do. We are not going to.
You heard the words bigly, but we know that he eventually is going to say bigliest. I brought one book to tell you a sad story. It's a sad story. This is the book, Field Guide of Urban Fowl. And you know that inside these different fowl are like, there's a sitting duck. There's a sitting duck, and if I can find it, I'll show you a stool pigeon. And there's a description, field marks, the voice, the habitat, and behaviors. This is the sad part. This book was editioned to 100 copies, and it is 60 pages long, and it's printed in 3 colors, which makes it
pretty intensive.
Longer. Yeah. So I am printing, and I'm saying to myself, what in the world is taking so long? So I sit down and I redo the math of what it was supposed to take me, and it was supposed to take me no more than 9,000 impressions. Well, I redid the math, and it was actually 13,500 impressions. And then to make matters worse, I had the imposition messed up. One page.
Can you explain what imposition is to those who are in the audio?
When you fold something up like this, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? That's the sole secret of making books. You have to have the imposition down correctly. That's why I have those proofing boards out there too, is so that I can't fail to see that matter. I didn't have a proofing board when I did this job.
Oh my goodness.
So here I am. I have made a mistake on one number, and it meant that that whole signature had to go through the press 6 different times, 160, because you have to have add-ons, additional proofs, and it came out to an additional 1,000 pages.
Holy cow, that's crazy.
That is my sad story.
I don't think it's sad. I think it's funny and crazy at the same time, but sad is not the word that I would associate with it. Frustrating, of course.
I reached the 4th stage of anger. The first stage of anger is you logically curse,
Right.
You lose your immortal soul, but you curse. The next step is you spit at what you do. The 3rd step is you throw something up against the wall. And the 4th stage of anger is when it sticks.
That's good. I think you should make a book about that, the stages of anger, when it comes to the book arts. Thank you for joining us for this week's Quarantour with Craig Jobson. If you would like to learn more about Craig and his work, please visit his website at www.larksparrowpress.com. And if you would like to support more programming like this one, please visit our website at artistbookhouse.org/donate. Thank you so much.